Hello learners, welcome to the yet another session of environmental and occupational hazards, that is the occupational health hazards in construction industries. We know that construction industry is one of the stable growing industries of the world, and also the labor, construction labor forms 7.5% of the world labor force. In India particularly, it is the largest economic activity after agriculture, and since it is a labor intensive industry that consists of 44% of all urban unorganized workers. This workforce that normally constitute 55% of unskilled laborers and 27% of the skilled laborers, and rest are the technical and supportive staff. The two broad categories of construction workers are the building and the civil engineering. Building that applies to works that involves the structures like houses, offices, shops, factories and schools. Civil engineering that applies to all other built structures in our environments like roads, tunnels, canals and dams, railways and docks. Construction workers in both categories are at a greater risk of developing certain health disorders and sickness than workers in many other industries. So, they are exposed to multiple physical, chemical and also biological agents that make them vulnerable to various health problems like injuries, respiratory problems, dermatitis, musculoskeletal disorders and also gastrointestinal diseases. The work is very hard, that is a lot of physical labor is involved, and frequently under difficult conditions like adverse weather conditions and the nature of work, hours of work and low pay and poor living conditions with lack of basic amenities and separation from the family and lack of job security and lack of access to the occupational health services make the situations very worse. So, due to the ergonomic issues, they are also vulnerable to degenerative disorders. Apart from these, in most of the construction projects, the workers, those who are employed, are unorganized in nature and also frequently not guided by the legislations made for the health and welfare of the workers, and they are not eligible for the free or subsidized care. Learner, first we have to see that what type of hazards normally they will face. First we will look into the physical hazards. So, in these physical hazards we can also verify or whether we have to learn also, that is a noise as a physical hazard, heat, vibration and radiation are the most important physical hazards they will come across. For example, if we will see the noise hazards, in construction plants or the construction sites, the compressors and the concrete breakers, they are frequently create very loud noise. So, high noise levels that can distract the concentration and difficulties in speech communication and also increase the risk of the accidents because they will deviate from the focus. So, the sources of noise like engines of vehicles are air compressors and cranes and also some types of winches and rivet guns and nail guns or paint guns and pneumatic hammers. Normally these are and also associated with these power saws and sanders, routers, planners, explosives and also so many other equipment they will use in this site. So, noise is present on demolition of the projects by the very activity of the demolition. So, regular exposure to high noise levels that can also leads to the tinnitus and also tinnitus and also the hearing loss, even though it may take many years for the symptoms to become apparent. So, handheld power tools which are regularly used in this construction site, and the vibration of these tools normally can cause the hand arm vibration syndrome, because due to the vibration of drilling machine and also hammering and also for the cutting of the materials like this type of vibration hazard will take place. So, it may affect the fingers, hands and arms and can also cause the permanent damage over time. So, the more a worker is exposed to the vibration, the more likely to be the problems will occur. So, as an employer, The law states that you need to assess and control any risk from the vibration, and sometimes if it is possible, try to select the tools that are exposing low vibration while working, and the risk which is associated is assessed and then controlled in between, where the noise has already been reduced by other controls, but an acceptable levels that has not still been reached, that is a hearing protection should be provided, and then earth moving equipment and vibrating work surface and other large mobile machines, they are subjected to the workers to the segmental and then entire body vibration. And also handheld power tools like pneumatic hammers are there, drills, they are also regularly used in the construction, and the vibration can cause the hand arm vibration syndrome. So these conditions also affect the fingers and the movement of hands, movement of the arms and tightening of the shoulders, and also can cause the permanent damage. So wherever there is a possibility, there have to be some engineering modification in terms of the using of the dampeners and also some other engineering controls have to be taken care of. And heat and also cold hazards, they also arises primarily because of the large portion of the construction work is conducted while exposed to the extreme weather conditions, and roofers are also exposed to the sun and frequently with no protection, sometimes receiving both heavy radiant and convective heat loads in addition to the metabolic heat from physical labor. So the principal source of non-ionizing ultraviolet radiation are the sun and also electric arc which is used in welding. So exposure to this ionizing radiation is less common, but also occur with X-ray inspection of welds, or otherwise it may occur with the instruments like flow meters and also that are normally used in the radioactive isotopes. So those who are working under the water or in pressurized tunnels and also some divers, they are exposed to high barometric pressures. So those workers are at high risk for the developing a variety of conditions which are associated with the high pressure like decompression sickness and also inert gas narcosis and aseptic bone necrosis and also some other disorders. Now we will look into the chemical hazards. So the way in which chemicals affect human body is depends upon its form. We have already learnt about this one. So they will enter into the body by inhalation or breathing in, or sometimes it may be an ingestion or by swallowing method or absorption through the skin. So wherever the inhalation or breathing is the most important route of entry of these chemicals into the body. So some toxic gases and vapors, they are also present in construction site that can cause irritation in the nose and also throat by giving a warning of their presence. So we have to understand that lot of toxic chemicals are there. So sometimes they do not have the penetrate deep into the lungs or bloodstream. So there is a possibility of ingestion or the swallowing the chemicals like lead based paints. They have to be handled, and the handler sometimes something or the smokes without first washing the employees hands. So toxic vapors that contaminate utensils which are used for the drinking or eating, or sometimes when metals are eaten on site. So toxic fumes from the welding and soldering procedures and also electrical shock that can cause bodily injury, illness, sometimes death may occur. So because of the no oxygen, particularly in the confined spaces. So chemical hazards are often airborne in nature, and also they can appear as dust, fumes, mist, vapors, or sometimes it may be a gas. So the exposure usually occurs by the inhalation or otherwise some airborne hazards, they may settle on and also be absorbed through the intact skin. So chemical hazards also occur in liquids or semi-liquid state, solvents, cleansing agents, or as powders. So they may also be ingested with food or water. Sometimes it might be inhaled by smoking. So we never know in what way it will enter into in our body. So there are several illnesses that have been linked to the construction site and construction workers, like silicosis and also the sand blasters, tunnel builders, and also rock drill operators. So asbestosis is asbestosis among asbestos insulation workers and steam pipe filters, that building demolition workers, and also some other disease like bronchitis among the welders, and skin allergies among the masons, and others those who are working with the cement. And some diseases like neurological disorders normally we will observe in painters, and others those who are exposed to organic solvents, especially lead. And also death rate from the cancer of the lungs and also respiratory infections have been found among asbestos insulation workers, roofers, welders, and also some woodworkers. And normally lead poisoning, that also normally frequently we will observe in this type of workers, that will occur among the bridge workers especially, and then painters. So some people have the some health outcomes are also there, like dermatitis. It is an inflammatory skin condition that is caused by the exposure to the hazardous substances like wet cement as well as the solvents. Thus, normally they are toxic in nature. So this can be either by the irritant dermatitis, which is usually caused by the skin coming in contact with the substance, or allergic contact dermatitis, where a person develops an allergic reaction to a substances or the chemical which is toxic in nature. And also sometimes we will observe that prolonged exposure to the asbestosis that leads to the asbestosis, and also pleural plaque and lung cancer, and also sometimes it is a mesothelioma. And also the dangers that arises with the asbestosis fibers that become airborne in nature and also remain suspended in the air. So breathing in these fibers definitely can cause the damage to the lungs, and also finally ultimately it leads to the lung cancer. So in addition to this one, respirable crystalline silica RCS is also formed when construction materials which contains the silica, like bricks or the concrete and granite or tiles, they will cut or drilled or crushed, or sometimes it is an abraded. So these procedures will definitely eliminate, or the crystalline silica will enter into the air. So respirable these compounds, silica compounds, crystalline silica compounds can be breathed in and may reach the deep lungs, where it can scar the delicate tissue of the lung. So difficulty in breathing, definitely the first symptom normally we will observe with this one, and long term exposure to the respirable crystalline silica may cause the increase in the risk of the lung cancer. So another material is the cadmium. So about almost 70,000 employees in the construction industry have been exposed to cadmium. So that is normally used as a rust preventive coating on steel, and also it is an alloying element. So the acute exposure of the cadmium that can produce severe lung irritation, or otherwise it is a pulmonary edema, and sometimes there is a chance of death. So long term exposure that will be resulted in the emphysema, and also can damage the kidneys. And next is the zinc metal. It is used in the manufacture of brass and galvanized metals, and also various other alloys. So in the process of welding or cutting zinc coated metals, there is a possibility of inhalation of fumes, and some particles definitely it will enter into our body, that can cause the metal fume fever. And some oxides like iron oxide is the significant and also important alloying element in the steel manufacturing. So the construction workers are frequently exposed to iron oxide, which is highly toxic in nature, that are released from both the base metal and also electrode during the welding process. So the primary acute effect of this type of exposure is the irritation of the nasal passages, throat, and also lungs. Another important toxic compound is the mercury. So compounds used to coat metals to prevent rust or we can say that to inhibit the foliage growth, that is especially in the marine paints. So the mercury vapors which produced under the intense heat of the arc are the gas flame. So the exposure of these mercury fumes that produce stomach pain immediately, diarrhea, kidney damage or respiratory failures, and also long term exposure they will produce the tremors and emotional instability and also hearing damage. And next we will move on to the another important lead oxide, that is lead oxide fumes normally generate in the process of welding and also cutting of the lead bearing alloys or metals. Those surfaces have been painted with a lead based paint. So definitely lead is adversely affects the human brain and also CNS, that is the central nervous system, circulatory system, reproductive system, kidneys and also muscles. So the inhalation or otherwise ingestion that can cause the lead poisoning. And some fluorides are also there. There are various types of fluxes used in the welding which are coated with the fluoride compounds. So construction workers frequently exposed to these fluxes that may irritate the eyes, nose and also throat. So the repeated exposure in air over a long period that may cause the pulmonary edema, that means fluid which is present in the lungs, and also the there is a bone damage also occurs. And some other compounds like chlorinated hydrocarbon which are used as a solvents, and hydrocarbons and also used in the degreasing process or otherwise cleaning operations in the construction activities. So in welding, especially in the cutting operations, the heat and the UV radiation from an arc that may decompose the vapors and also form the highly toxic and irritating phosgene gas. So diseases that are resulted from the chemical hazards started from the smoke, fog, vapor and then odor. They are communicated by the air. So chemicals affect human body through inhaling or dermal contact, especially in the case of organic solvents and then pesticides. So a large number of liquid chemicals like glue or gum adhesives, asphalt, tar and cement, powdered cement, we can say that they are largely used in the construction sites. They are very dangerous to the workers. They may cause the diseases like silicosis. We have already seen that it is a disease that is caused by the inhaling tiny bits of silica and contact whenever it contact in the respiratory tract. And it is also a lot of workers who blend sand and also use rock drilling machines and dig a tunnel. They will come across this type of disease. And asbestos is also another type of disease. So it is by caused by the inhaling asbestos fibers. So frequently it is normally occurred among the workers, those who are working with the asbestosis. And another disease is known as the bronchitis. So it is very common among the welders. And skin allergies are also common in the workers, those who are working with the cement, that is normally they will call it as masons. And neurological disorders, that is nervous disorders, it is also normally appear in the workers and painters, those who are working with the organic solvents as well as the lead based paints. And most important disease is the lung cancer. So mostly it is observed among the workers, those who are working with the asbestosis, and particularly for the roofing and the workers with the wooden work and the welders, and lead poisoning is also common in the bridge repair workers as well as the painters. Learners, so first we have to check that what are the preventive or the mitigation measures of the chemical hazards. There is a lot of research studies have been conducted, and then they are suggesting that both psychological and social factors are important in determining the way people perceive and also respond to the risks. So the perceptions and understandings of this type of risks which are important and also influence on the conceptualization of the risk control strategies. And especially the risk management, it is a three-stage process. In the first stage, hazard identification, and in the second stage, that is a hazard assessment, And in the third stage, that is appropriate controls for the risk are selected according to the risk control hierarchy. So, for reducing construction site related chemical hazards, it is highly important to control the exposure to the chemicals and also the toxic substances. So, there is a hierarchy of controls which are used as a means of determining how to implement feasible as well as effective controls. And next we will see the biological hazards. So, we know that the biological hazards normally includes the bacteria, viruses, fungi, or otherwise normally we can call it as the mold, and also the other microorganisms which are associated with the toxins. So, they have the ability to have the adverse effect on the human health in different ways. Maybe it is a very mild allergic reactions, sometimes it is a very serious medical conditions, sometimes it leads to death also. So, these organisms are widespread in the natural environment. They are found in air, water, soil, plant and animals everywhere. Because of many microbes, they will reproduce very rapidly. So, they require minimal resources for the survival. So, that is why they are very potential danger, and also there are a wide variety of occupational settings they are present. And exposure to this type of biological hazards, normally they will occur during the demolition procedure, or sometimes it is a renovation procedure, especially the sewing work is there, and or otherwise some air handling systems and other construction work from the contact with the contaminated or disease carrying material like soil, water and insects, especially the mosquitoes or ticks, bird or bat droppings, and also animals. So, in the construction industry, biological health hazards are most commonly found in working in the healthcare facilities, like an accumulation of animal waste, and also in the presence of rodents, insects and birds, and also sometimes it is a demolition of remodeling of old construction sites, buildings, because there is a very likely the presence of mold during the clearance operations and the removal of the plants, trees and other foliage landscaping. Fungi is also there, and it is also found everywhere, both indoors and outdoors, and throughout the year. And the terms of the fungi and mold are normally they will used interchangeably. That means we can also sometimes use the fungi and sometimes we will use mold, and mold is actually a type of fungi. So, there are many thousands of species of molds are there present in the all over the world, and also found in indoors, that is comes from the outdoor sources only. So, they will grow and become a problem only when there is a water damage or water leakage and high humidity or dampness is there. So, molds are normally organized into three groups according to the human responses. So, they are allergic in nature, there is a pathogenic and toxinogenic and allergenic molds. So, allergenic, pathogenic and toxinogenic. If we will consider the allergenic molds, they are usually produce life threatening health effects and are most likely to affect those who are already allergic for the allergic in nature, and sometimes if suppose those who are having this asthma disease, they will also get affected very easily. The human system responses to the allergenic molds, they have a tendency to be very relatively mild depending upon the individual sensitivities, especially for the producing the scratchy throats or eye and nose irritations and rashes. If we will see the pathogenic molds, they will usually produce some type of infection. So, they can cause serious health effects also in persons those who are having the suppressed immune systems. So, healthy people can usually resist infection by these type of molds, and whatever it is the dose. So, every time they will expose to this compounds or this fungi or the molds regardless of the dose. In some cases, high exposure can cause the hypersensitivity, pneumonitis. It is an acute response to the exposure to an organism. So, under toxinogenic molds, there are some mycotoxins are there. They can cause serious health effects in almost everyone. So these agents have toxic effects from the short term irritation to the immunosuppression, and sometimes it may cause the cancer also. So therefore, when toxinogenic molds are found, further evaluation is highly recommended. So molds affect on the body also, and also they will produce and release millions of spores, the small enough to be the airborne. So they can also produce toxic agents, we can say that, and also like mycotoxins. Spores and mycotoxins have the negative effect on the human health. So the most common route of the entry into the body is through the inhalation. So mold has a characteristic smell, and also if we can smell mold, we can also inhale the mold by smelling itself. And learner, we have to check the other hazards like psychological hazards, those who are working with this one. Especially there is a wide range of work which are characteristic are the work stresses potentially causing stress among the construction workers. So psychosocial issues have been linked to these specific detrimental outcomes that are related to the performance, productivity, and health, or otherwise psychosocial life. Typical example I would like to give that by hiring credible subcontractors at short notice, and discontinuing the employment of existing staff due to the shortage of work adds to the frustration. So another important hazard is the ergonomic hazard. Strains and sprains are the most common injuries among the construction workers, and chronically disabling musculoskeletal disorders that can occur because of the traumatic injury and repetitive forceful movements and awkward postures are the overexertion. And sometimes falls will happen due to the unstable footing or unguarded holes, and slips of scaffoldings and ladders are very common in construction industry. And also the regularly lifting heavy loads and carrying or handling materials and items, as well as the repetitive work like plastering, and also they will definitely add on to the musculoskeletal disorders. So these many disorders as well as hazardous, they are the construction workers are every day they are facing. So what are the efforts, especially in Indian government, they made for these construction workers? So there is a National Safety Council of India is a self-government body and also non-profit and non-governmental organization. It was established under the Societies Act in Mumbai. So every year on March 4th in India celebrated as a National Safety Council of India. So the National Safety Day or Week, it is a movement that is carried out on an annual basis in order to intercept and minimize the risk as well as the dropping of life of workers during the industrial accidents like financial loss by availing safety, health, and environmental related issue. So the safety day is being celebrated with the great immense interest and also focus to make awareness for the workers about the get down the industrial accidents by conducting widespread safety awareness programs. So during this day or week, various activities will be conducted to the public as per the safety requirement. In the construction industries, for example, in the big construction organizations are taking modern techniques like setting up a safety organization, safety policy, safety checklist like that in order to build up their construction fields as an accident-free hours. So I would like to conclude over here, learner. The construction workers are exposed to multiple risks at working and living places. They are exposed to physical, chemical, biological, ergonomic hazards and environmental, and sometimes it is a psychosocial risk. In most places, the workers were residing in makeshift camps inside the project sites that expose them to health risks even after the working hours. So due to the poor environmental conditions at work sites, chances of diseases from the poor sanitation and unsafe drinking water were very high. So the sites that are creating breeding grounds for various vectors and also unprotected laborers act as potential baits. So in addition to this one, immigrants from the disease endemic areas with different immune status and settling at highly vector receptive and unprotected project sites, and also they will introduce new sites and multi-drug resistant, and also chances of getting new infections, and they are very high in nature. With this I would like to conclude, and in the next session we will come up with some other important aspects of the environmental and occupational hazards. Thank you.